Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is Big Me, Little Me. When we are in service to a higher purpose, we often find ourselves navigating the challenges of our humanness. And that's what we get to talk about today, and how this service to purpose can really help to heal that smaller self. And those are all in air quotes, big air quotes, around big and little and small. And before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating this beam of light from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's gently press our palms together and gently, softly rub your fingers against your palms. Feel the sensation, the tickling, the tingling, the textures, the pressure, and allow those sensations to bring you present to your physical body, this remarkable vehicle through which we experience our lives. And welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Roslyn. Good morning, Lisa. So wonderful to have you guys here with us this morning. It's Friday, and what a week it's been. Anyway, today we're talking about big me, little me, and this came from a conversation the other day talking about being in service to awakening or to a sense of mission and purpose. We talked earlier this week about rising to your greatness. This is in its way a continuation of that conversation, where a sense of mission and purpose allows us to transcend our limitations. And that occurs because the purpose becomes the thing that's important. And so there's a level of resiliency that emerges when in service to something greater than ourselves, that allows us to go through phases where we've embarrassed ourselves, or we felt like a failure, or we have felt incompetent, and yet to get up and dust ourselves off and continue on, because the purpose is more important than our fears or our ego or other aspects of self that might limit us. So to step into our greatest expression, having a sense of mission and purpose is a really, really powerful thing, because again, it allows us to get over ourselves, because then we can get to the place where we recognize that the service, it's not about us. It's not about me. It's not about me looking stupid, or me saying the wrong thing, or whatever. I'm there as a vehicle for something grander, right? And the big me can be some part of ourselves that is in that service, that's able to rise to that. But another aspect, like a downside aspect of the big me, could be the big ego me that gets really attached to and identified with the role that I'm playing. And I call it buying your own press, just getting very full of yourself for being so important in some way or another. And that can be its own pitfall that the mission can pull one out of. Because then if we can refocus ourselves on the purpose, the intention, the bigger picture, then the big me gets kind of put back in its place, and it gets to be a vehicle of life rather than an expression of self-importance. So, it's interesting to be navigating when in service to a greater purpose. The truth is that we're still human, right? And we still have our pitfalls and our stumbles and our challenges. And the benefit of this purpose kind of notion, purpose-driven, mission-driven life, is that it can enable us to put those things in perspective. And I'm not talking about through denial, but it allows us to do the work that we need to do. Like we can recognize that we have growth that we have to do in order to be able to be effective in our service. So it may mean that we are inspired to get over our fears of being seen or being stupid or being, whatever our fears are. So Rosalind says, the seeds of wanting to have an influence, instead not getting the job promotion, creating the web page, and no one booking appointments. To be safe looks like staying small and not being seen. Wow. So yeah, wanting to have an influence and not getting the job promotion, for instance. Well, so one of the things that that brings to mind for me is the contrast between wanting to have, and I'm not saying that this is how you meant it, but wanting to have an influence or wanting to have power or wanting to be in control. And I'm not applying this to you in your case, Rosalind, in this conversation. But that's a very different motivation from wanting to make a contribution, or desiring to serve, right? So it's a sticky kind of topic, I think, because we can be motivated out of a quest for power. We can also be motivated out of a quest for meaning and purpose, to be seeing possibility. Hello, Gia. Welcome. So good to have you here from India. Our multi-continental podcast or conversation today. So good to have you here with us. So when we're talking about being in service to a mission, that can be abused or we can use that to abuse ourselves as well, right? Rather than to nurture and expand and grow ourselves, where we could be just running ourselves ragged in service to the mission, not considering our personal needs, et cetera, et cetera. So the big me, the big little me, this person that I was speaking with was talking about having one foot in each world. And I know I said this the other day, what's in the center, and what was in the center where those two places met was clarity. And I wonder what it would be, like there's no me in clarity. What would it be to be being in that space of clarity? So the big me and the little me kind of either disappear or converge, or maybe both disappear in their convergence, and something else emerges. And we have, outside the context or the conversation of purpose, we have many opportunities in our lives to choose to be the bigger person. And what I mean by that, the bigger person in our own being. Like, what would it be to be the person that I aspire to be? How would I act if I were the person that I aspire to be? And that's another way that we can step into this higher expression of ourselves. And that's really what this conversation is about. And at the same time, we're talking about big me, little me, and the disappearing me in the middle. It's making me think of so many conversations I've had recently about shedding our beliefs, shedding our limitations, shedding our predispositions, our prejudices, our judgments, and through that shedding, really coming more into a much deeper presence and sense of presence, which Rosalind, over the past little while, there have been a number of interjections or comments that you've made about trying to discern truth from falsehood, or to shed false ideas. And I think that if there is a possibility to have proximity to truth with a capital T, my inkling is that it resides in presence, that it is when we are present that we're able to be in that liminal space, that interim in between space called clarity between the big and the little me. And because presence is the suspension of those judgments, I think, at least in my idealization of it, that is. So I'm wondering, for you, what do you battle sometimes between the high road and the low road, we can call it? It's like, well, I'm really angry and I would like to be able to lash out. Good morning, Bernadette. So good to have you here with us. Welcome. Where we want to lash out, and then we want to be able to live into the person that we envision ourselves to be, or the possibility of the person that we know we can become. How do we navigate those moments? How do we navigate our humanness? The light and the dark, and the different levels of frequency, the different levels of energy that we represent, because we're all of it. We are all aspects, and there are times when anger is appropriate, and there are ways to have that anger without it having us. Same thing with hurt. It's so interesting. I had a wonderful conversation with someone yesterday talking about what had been a very, very deep trauma in the breakup of a partnership. And what they realized is that part of the pain of that breakup had to do with the degree of responsibility that they had placed upon this other person for all the goodness in the life that they had with this person. And I think this is a really, really interesting thing to be thinking about, because what happened was this was a partnership in pursuit of a purpose. And so what had happened is that this person who was so hurt identified the person who left with the purpose. So when that person left, the purpose left. And what was awesome was, oh, wow, when they recognized that they had made this association where they kind of gave the whole burden of the purpose to this other person, when they realized that, they were able to reclaim the purpose and to say, well, wait a second, it's not about, the relationship was the relationship and the purpose is the purpose. And somehow they had gotten conflated. So Gia says, wow, I needed to hear this, Mira. I love the topics you choose and how you navigate those moments. Hire me to small me with an example. Please, if you can share from your life. Oh boy, share from my life. Okay, I can just share a couple different situations. Thank you for that question. Rosalind says, ask self, who is having the desire? Yes, exactly. So big me and little me. So how about with an altercation with a friend or a loved one, and feeling offended, and then choosing, do I step into the relationship? Do I speak about the challenge that we're having with one another? Do I speak about, well, you and I, when we just end up, when we have conversations, we end up having this friction, and it doesn't feel good for me. I don't imagine it feels good for you. Do we speak it or do we retreat? And I have found myself in both situations in some way, retreating and extracting oneself, is that I tried that and it didn't feel great. I have to say, it didn't feel great. I kept playing it through in my head. I was retreating because I knew it didn't feel good for the other person. It didn't feel good for me. And then we had a conversation and I was able to address it. And that felt a whole lot better, to address it without blame, to just say, wow, we have this weird dynamic where it ends up being at conflict with each other, and it's not supporting either of us. And graciously, this friend that I was able to share that with said, thank you so much for speaking it. It's like, now that it's there, now that we've spoken it, we can, it wasn't like, let's end the friendship. It opened a possibility for a deepening of the relationship. Gia says, I love the example you were giving from your client's life, if I heard it right. Yeah, so what happened with the client, with this relationship, this partnership that severed, the client, the friend, the client had felt really rudderless, had felt very lost because of the conflation of these two, of the purpose and the relationship. And so when they were able to extract those two things, or to extract the purpose from the person, then they were able to rediscover their big self, which was pretty awesome. And Lisa, you bring up a great point. What if the other person isn't ready to hear it? So I've had that experience too, and it's somewhat heartbreaking, and I know that you're in the same situation. And so if the other person isn't ready to hear it, we get, what I've chosen to do at this point is withdraw, and not with malice. I still have a deep love for this person, but there's not a way at this moment to navigate forward. This isn't the friendship, this is a different situation, but it's just, I can love this person from a distance, and we may or may not have the opportunity to reconcile it, but I have made attempts that were rebuffed, and okay, so the timing isn't right for that. And in fact, in that situation, there was a peripheral incident that happened with someone else that's related, that I don't have direct contact to, and I had a person had an accident, and I wanted to be able to say, I'm thinking of you. And so I needed to reach through this person that there's all this friction with. And I thought about it, and I decided, well, that's where my heart is to reach out and say, I wish you a speedy recovery. So I did that and asked this person to convey that message. And I'm not expecting anything in return from the person. I'm not hoping to reopen communication. I don't have any hope or expectation around it. I just wanted to convey my wishes for this other person's speedy recovery. I'm not saying that I'm the paragon of virtue here. I'm not saying that I know how to do all of this. I'm stumbling my way through life the same way you guys are. We're all doing the best we can, and measuring, like, how does it feel? Does that feel appropriate? Does that feel right? Does that feel like it is an expression of my better self? It would be different if I were withholding communication out of anger and judgment and vengeance. That's a whole different experience than saying, there's just no room for that right now. There's no room for that level of communication. And there may be a moment when it feels like there's an opening, and when it feels like there's an opening, regardless of what happens on the other end, then we can act into that as what feels in greatest alignment for ourselves. So the big me is hopefully the me that is caring for the well-being of the other person as well as my own. And the little me is the one that is, reactive or angry, resentful, vindictive, whatever. And it's not always so clear either, because we can convince ourselves that we're coming from an elevated place when it isn't necessarily true. So we get to just keep calibrating and adjusting and paying attention and being open to new possibility, which is really challenging, to close the door but leave a window open, for example. And really truly, you know, we're all just stepping through life step by step, and sometimes we stumble and fall and get to pick ourselves up, and the navigating, you know, sense of purpose that we can use as our North Star is a really powerful thing to have, whether it's awakening. I mean, maybe the sense of purpose or mission is to awaken. And if that's the case, it's like, what would the awakened me do? You know, and allow ourselves to be guided by that greater intention, that greater commitment. So Rosalind says, finding peace within despite not having the external circumstance. That's exactly what it's about, Rosalind, because all of our experience really truly resides from within. And we often believe, we live as if we believe that it's all because of external circumstances. It's rainy outside today, so I feel miserable. It's hot, so, you know, I feel grumpy. Or, you know, it's interesting how we ascribe or give away our well-being to things that we have no control over. So Bernadette says, at moments of feeling offended, I tend to step back for a moment and decide two things. Good for you, first of all, to have the presence, Bernadette, to step back instead of react. Good for you. High praise. So Bernadette decides, first, why am I offended? Is it because they don't share the outcome I desire? Or is it their issue that I'm placing myself into it? So is it their issue? So first is, why am I offended? And is it my issue or is it their issue? Kind of is what I'm getting from what you're saying. So it's both. It's always both, right? If somebody has a hard time with me, that's their issue. And there may be something that I get to look at that I've created, right? So it's I kind of believe that our world is a reflection of ourselves. You know, our world, our experience is our interpretation. Our experience is the result of the lens through which we view the world and interpret the world. And, you know, like a wounded animal is a wounded animal. It's not there. It's not about you when it bites you. You know, it's a wounded animal, right? And so you can take it personally, but it's not about you. And you might have done something, like you might have done something that frightened that animal or provoked that animal. You might have pulled that animal's tail and it turned around and bit you. So you get to be accountable to that. And, you know, maybe if that animal hadn't been frightened when you pulled its tail, it would have been okay. And it could have turned around and looked at you or licked you. But, you know, there's this weird dynamic where we create all of it and we create none of it in its way. So the big me and the little me, and in between is clarity. I just love that. And another way of saying the clarity is presence. And the more present we are, the more free we can be of all of the reactivity and conditioning, to just be able to be responsive and present, you know. So we're all graced with those moments that can happen. And maybe what we're looking to do is to increase those moments, right? And I can say that purpose, you know, a sense of mission, a sense of purpose, a vision for what you're working toward in your life, I can tell you, for me, it's been the greatest vehicle of transformation that I've ever experienced. You know, that it's a North Star that allows me to continue to self-correct and to be inspired to go beyond my limited notions of who I am. So thank you, Dido. So good to have you here with us this morning. So much love to you. It's Friday. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, everyone. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page at 9 a.m. Eastern. And oh, you're so kind, Dido. Thank you, sweetheart. And Roslyn, so much love to all of you guys. And I, Lisa says my grandson graduated kindergarten. It's so funny. I don't think I got to graduate kindergarten, you know, like it was just like you finished kindergarten, right? But how cool is it that we can celebrate all of these wins. So happy grandson graduation. April, wonderful to have you here with us this morning. Welcome. And have a great weekend, everybody. Until next time. So much love to you. Take care.